slot. We've been on the air for almost 10 years, and for the past several years, we've had this time slot from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Central on Channel 10. That's changing. Beginning next Saturday, June 3rd, we will still be on Next Sunday, June 3rd, we will still be on Channel 10. We'll be on from 1:30 to 3 p.m. It's up there on the screen now. We will not be on from 4:30 to 6 p.m. I don't know if anybody will actually be on Channel 10 that time, but the Moving Studio is going to be used for something else. This move, for those of you who are local in Austin, in the ACA or participating in events, seriously affects what our regular Sunday schedule is like. We had it all worked out relatively well, where we would have Sunday morning meetings at Ventana del Sol, beginning at 11:30, and then we'd have on the first Sunday a lecture series that would begin at noon. All of those times were based on a TV show from 4:30 to 6, and that's changed. So over the coming weeks, this week we're on, of course, at the normal time. If you're watching now, you've figured that out, I hope. Next Sunday we'll be on from 1:30 to 3, and the plan right now is that next Sunday and for the foreseeable future, we will continue to have, the ACA will continue to have meetings at Ventana del Sol, still starting at 11:30, although that may change. All of these meetings, by the way, are open to the public. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to attend. You don't have to be a member. The time at Ventana del Sol may shift. We'll discuss it more and see how it fits in with the schedule and what other changes we need to make. For board members, the board meeting that would normally occur after the Sunday morning meeting on the second Sunday, that's definitely going to have to move. It would overlap with the TV show. So we're discussing it now, and I won't waste much more time on that. All the board members should have access to the Yahoo list of board members, and we can talk about that online and at the various meetings over the next week or so, because we're 2 weeks out from another board meeting. Next Sunday, being the first Sunday of the month, is also generally our lecture series. So instead of going to Ventana del Sol, we go to the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. The lecture begins at 12 o'clock. I was scheduled to deliver the lecture for next week. And it was going to be a rip-roaring, wonderful romp through the history of hell. There's some inside jokes here, because I had to make a choice as to whether or not I was going to go ahead and do the lecture next week and let somebody else do the TV show, or whether I was going to go and do the TV show. I've opted, because it's the first week at a new time slot. We don't know how many people are going to be watching. We don't know how many callers we're going to get. Since I'm the one who's kind of saddled with the responsibility for the show, I have rationalized away my duties to do the lecture, and I'll be here on the show. We are still going to be meeting at the Austin History Center, and while the lecture that I was going to give won't be there, I'll do my best to do it at another time, and we'll be doing something else there.
We'll have a program of some sort. We're not quite sure what it is.
Kind of event or program. We'll try to make it entertaining, and we'll be doing something else. Anybody who's managed to sneak a peek at my lecture notes will know that that may not be hard considering the current state. But anyway, after the program,
what could be as entertaining as hell?
I think it's great, and I'm looking forward to doing the lecture, and we will do it. I will definitely do it, even if the lecture series goes away. We'll figure it out. Maybe I'll do it as a slideshow on the program or something. There's some really cool stuff in there, and lots of great art. I tried not to get overly scholarly and digging through tomes. I wanted to keep it a little bit lighter and still entertaining. But anyway, enough about the lecture that you're not going to get to see. Dinner after the program, we've been getting together and going to Threadgills. The program is on currently until 6 p.m. and we normally get down there at 6:30, and that's going to happen today. However, next week we're only on until 3 o'clock, and 3:30 isn't really a really good dinner time. There's also some concern that it may not be an opportune moment to go to Threadgills. We're not positive what we're doing next week. I think it's possible that we'll go to Threadgills anyway and sort out where we want to go after the fact, but the folks involved in the TV show will get together and discuss that. We'll let you know next week for sure exactly where we're going. But for today, it stays the same. We'll still be going down to Threadgills after the show. And the good news is that the events that we have that don't take place on Sunday aren't going to change. It doesn't affect us at all. So Thursdays, we'll still have Atheist Happy Hour, Dog and Duck Pug at 17th and Guadalupe. Did I say pug?
Yeah, that's okay.
I did say pug. It's not a dog. It's actually a bar, but they call it a pub because they're trying to make it look a little Englishy. But
Brain
no,
fart. It's very apropos for today's topic.
It's actually a bar. Yeah, between technical problems and things moving around and everything else, I'm a joyful basket case. But no, we're having fun. Dog and Duck Pub, 17th of Guadalupe. We're down there starting at 7 o'clock on Thursdays. That also is open to any atheist or atheist-friendly person. And our new membership / treasurer person has been working with the activities coordinator. And we got a whole bunch of new events that are on the schedule that I want to let people know about. These events are open to members, prospective members, guests. If you're coming to any of these events with the intent to preach, proselytize, or provoke, please don't. This is a live call-in show. We'll have the number up for you. You can call in. Heck, you can email us. You can email tv@atheist-community.org with questions. You can visit our Yahoo list. We have one specifically called Ask an Atheist where you can come in to ask questions. You can email me directly, president@atheist-community.org. I don't mind. But our other events, we want to have fun. That includes, our dinner events and upcoming. This coming Wednesday, the 6th, or actually it'll be next Wednesday, the 6th. We'll be having a game night at Thor's Hammer, North 183 near McNeil. We'll be doing that in conjunction with CFI. The Center for Inquiry Austin also hosts a game night on Wednesdays. They do it at Thor's Hammer. We talked to them at a recent event that they hosted, and we're going to kind of do this as a joint event so that we definitely have enough people to play different games and participate, and that there's some interaction between the groups, and we'll see how it goes. And we used to have a game night regularly, but it had to be postponed and canceled. Now we're getting back on that. The following Wednesday, we're doing this rotating schedule of things. The following Wednesday, we're going bowling. The Wednesday after that, we're going to go play some pool. And all of the information is available at the website in the member section. I think it's up there. I don't know if it's up on the public notices. But if you want more information, you can email tv@atheist-community.org, and there's also other email addresses you can hit up. So the website, atheist-community.org, the email addresses, there's the Yahoo lists, there's a phone number, which you'll see, I think the phone number's at the end of the screen. Mm-hmm. There's a frequently asked questions page on the site, so that if you don't get through on the telephone today, or you don't want to, a lot of the questions that people ask commonly are up there. We've got a Friday night movie night coming up. That event right now is scheduled for members only. One of our members is graciously offering up his home for members to come down and enjoy a movie night. So hit up the members list if you're an ACA member to get more information on those events. And also, if you're interested in membership, if you're interested in joining and participating and supporting what we do, feel free to visit the website. There's plenty of information and contact. You can send email to almost anybody, and they'll help get you in touch. We've got a MySpace page now. The audio portion of this program, and also the nonprofits, is available for download and as a podcast. The video from this show is now available on Google. We're everywhere.
Yeah, for the video, we're almost got something like 3 years of it up.
Yeah.
So if you're really bored, there's lots and lots of video out there of weekly hour-and-a-half episodes. So that's a lot of video.
This is episode number 502, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's 502 weeks, and we haven't had a show every single week. But,
yeah, it's
been around a while.
Yeah. So yeah, the video for a lot of this is up, and there's some good stuff because I've only been doing this show for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And some of the hosts who were around long before me, Martin Wagner and Ray.
Yeah, he did the show several years. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of those episodes. They just weren't saved, which is a shame because he put on did a great job as host.
So we're working on that a little bit. Also, one of the events that's coming up that I wanted Don to tell you a little bit more about is June 9th. It's a week from this Saturday, and it's the Austin Pride Festival.
That's right. So that's a gay and lesbian event on the surface, but it ends up being a community event where there's a lot of diversity of programs, a lot of different groups that come out, and just kind of a meet and greet thing. And we'll have a booth there. And if you're interested, come on down and chat us up. We'll have flyers and tracks. Yeah, atheists have tracks, and chit chat with you, and you can learn about atheism, and we'll have our newsletters and those sorts of things. And so we're going to be there and let people know that we are pro diversity, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So as usual, the way the format of the program typically works is that I'm here every week, and we rotate through the co-hosts, and they bring in some topic to talk about, and you guys call and completely ignore everything we've discussed. That's the way it works.
That's okay.
And
That's
it's
okay.
fine.
I mean, we're here
appreciate
to
all calls.
talk about atheism, and there's lots of different questions that people have. So.
It's a lot, in reality, I went to this hate-free week at UT thing a couple months ago, and one of the, when I got up to talk a little bit, because they had members of a bunch of different religious organizations, the first thing I did was just walk up and say, atheists don't believe in God, and then I started to go back and take my seat, because that is the sum total of what's an atheist. I heard somebody recently was saying, well, I used to be an atheist, but I was extremely disappointed by atheism because it didn't offer me the answers that I wanted to these big questions. And I was like, it's not supposed to. So there's a lot of misperceptions about what atheism is or isn't. But it's kind of an extension of a worldview, or a number of different worldviews, whether it be materialist, naturalistic, things are based in reason. And so we end up covering a lot of broad topics. We don't just sit around and bash religion, although I have fun bashing religion, and we do it.
We'll do a little of that today.
Yeah.
I really want to talk to John because John wants to talk some more about porn.
Cool. John, you there?
Yeah.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, man. This is the objective subjective guy from last week, man.
Oh. Cool. This is objective, subjective,
Yeah.
and everything is subjective, and yet you're telling me that I'm wrong.
I'm sorry, I was talking while you were talking, and I missed what you said.
That's all right.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think Australia exists.
Well, I should put you on the phone with the last caller, and because
should convince him.
he believes that reality is subjective, that whatever doesn't exist for him at the moment doesn't exist. And you called in last week to say almost the exact same thing, that everything is subjective, and that therefore there's no basis to tell somebody else that they're wrong. Yet you told me you were wrong. I was wrong. But anyway.
Words in my mouth again, Matt. I did not say that the objectivity was useless, because as soon as I got off the phone last week, you said that I had said objectivity was useless. And I didn't say that.
Well, okay, you may not have.
Higher reality.
You may not have used those words, and you may not even realize that that's what you said. But sometimes I do this thing where I take a call and I summarize it and paraphrase it into what the call actually means, even if the person didn't realize it. But anyway, you called today to talk about.
That's your subjective thinking is what I was trying to say.
Well,
That's
then
your
you
interpretation.
should have been clearer. But today you called about porn, so get to it.
I was going to say, porn is bullshit, man. It's like all consumerism, and this idea. I mean, I can agree, because I'm into agreement more than I'm into disagreement, that women, are into romance and are, attracted to that, and men are more visual and visceral and quicker, and fantasize about the pizza boy with the big salami and everything.
Well, they don't
In
fantasize
reality,
about
I
the
think
boy, but
consumerism
yeah.
creates these stereotypes, and I have a girlfriend who used to like gay porn, and gay porn is the most masculine of all porn there is, and it is complete bullshit. And I don't think there's anybody. I think there's people who fantasize about it, and they rent it. And I mean, I'm not a homo, but nobody gets turned on by that. And
Are you wondering why I hadn't hung up on you yet, or you lost me somewhere? Evidently the line went dead. So if you want to call back in with a little less, I don't know, bullshit.
Well, I mean, I don't think porn is bullshit. I mean, it's a fact that people enjoy sex and enjoy sort of proxy sex by looking at other people who are having it. I mean, not all people, obviously, but it is a pretty big seller. And I mean, consumerism or not, I kind of tend to believe that you can't. I mean, for the most part, you can't have a really successful product that doesn't fulfill some kind of desire in their consumers.
Right. The whole consumerism thing, if you were going to make a point about that, one thing they have to realize is that it's kind of a circular thing. These ad agencies don't just invent something that everybody all of a sudden likes. They play on the desires that we already have, and those desires can shift and change over time, and they can be directed by advertising agencies and consumerism, where we steer in a certain direction because we're more exposed to that. But the base desires that they're playing on, while the basest desires that they're playing on, those are genetically predisposed by evolution. Sorry, that's just the way it is. People like to have sex. I mean, that's
And
the way
there's
it is.
good reasons, as I just explained in the first half hour.
Yeah.
And boy, this show is really going downhill because we started out talking about erudite, scientific concepts, and now we're only seemingly talking about gay porn.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that our next caller, who has called to talk about gay porn, well, maybe they're a little more scholarly in there.
Keep your finger on the button.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My question to you guys was, how do you deal personally with people that you may meet or know, and they may be really religious or whatever, and you don't want to offend them, and when they bring things up of that nature, you just really want to let them have their space and, not lose that contact with them as people, because I've noticed myself sometimes people tend to push away if they realize that I don't believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you guys basically deal with that? Because I think a lot of people are under the notion that if you don't believe in God, then they don't want to have any kind of contact with you. When I say God, I use that in a plural form because, I'm talking about maybe Muslims, Christians, whatever, because I know a variety of different people. And I just tend not to. I don't want to offend anyone by going into depth by, my reasons for not believing in a God or whatnot. Because I found that in the past it kind of throws people off.
Yeah.
And being that I'm a man of color, a lot of times I think a lot of the people that I deal with are my people per se. They have this process, this thought in their head where if you don't believe in a God, I don't need to be dealing with you.
It's a good question. I deal with it a lot in my work because, I'm a social worker at a nursing home, and many of the residents that I work with are, first of all, getting closer to what they believe is going to be meeting their God, and they're very, very strongly religious, and I certainly don't want to offend them at all. I would say that if you don't really know, if you know that a person is very strongly religious, I don't want to be in the closet about my religion, but I don't go into it as much, Like, with them, they don't really need to know that much about me and my religious beliefs. They just need to feel understood and appreciated and accepted. So, without talking about what I believe at all, I just kind of understand and appreciate and accept them and validate whatever comments they say. If it's someone that you think you're going to be getting to know really well, I'd drop hints of it, like I'd say something just offhanded, introducing the fact that I am an atheist and I don't believe in God. And if it seems like it's going to make them uncomfortable, I don't go too much more into it. And then, of course, if it's a question about, whether or not you're afraid that they're going to assume that you're a bad person because you don't believe in God, then I'll, maybe I'll start a little discussion talking a little bit about the positive. Again, that's what our group is about, is promoting positive atheism, the positive aspects to being an atheist.
Right.
Well, all the reasons why I am a moral person and all the things that I do believe are good and wonderful and beautiful about the world. And even the reasons why I appreciate their religion. I do appreciate a lot of things about the function that religion serves in the world when it's used appropriately. And the function that religion can serve in people's lives, and individually. Andy?
I personally deal with it by trying to not avoid bringing it up, but waiting until it comes upon me. Like, if I meet someone new, I don't immediately, hey, I'm Andy and I'm an atheist. I just talk to them and do what I would normally do, and if the subject comes up, I don't hide from it, but I wait for the subject to come up by itself. And I've learned that that is an easier way to deal with it, because if someone gets to know you and they learn what you're about, then that shouldn't matter. I've had people tell me before, after finding out, after I'd known them for months, how can you be atheist because you're one of the most moral people I know, and things like that. But they got to know me before they got to see me.
Yeah.
They didn't get that stereotype of, oh, an evil atheist in their head. They got to know me, and then they found out that I was atheist. So it was just, oh, well, that's not, that atheism doesn't define who I am as a person. It just defines where I stand on beliefs, where in respect to religion. And so I work as hard as I can to just be me, and if the subject comes up, deal with it then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay?
Okay, well, thanks for the information.
You're welcome. Thank you. Great. That was an excellent answer, Andy. I absolutely, I forgot to mention that. Let someone get to know you first, and then tell them you're an atheist. To simplify it. Okay.
Chris in somewhere in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Is it
Kailua Kona.
Kailua Kona? Okay.
Hey, I just wanted to. I've been listening to a lot of your, or watching and listening to a lot of your videos on YouTube, and I've heard a lot of Pias call in and talk about, or just aghast that we don't consider, oh, you die. You mean you're just going to die, and you're not going to have eternal life, and I don't know that they've ever considered what eternal life, how much time that is. I mean,
it's a lot.
I could go to each and every atom in the universe for 1 million years, and when I was done, I'd just be getting started. It just. I don't think our brain they consider how much time that is. So.
Yeah, and I guess it's not really meant to be, something they think about that deeply. This is meant to alleviate the fear of dying. So, that's all it is that, I'm going to go on for eternity. I don't have to die. It's like, well, even if there is an afterlife, you're still going to die to get there. So.
Yeah, and some would say it's actually impossible for us to properly comprehend infinities, eternities, that type of thing. It's just, and what we do know is that most of what we comprehend and understand is a very tiny fraction, both spatially and temporally. And the further we get from where we are, the less we care about it, and the less we understand, and the less sense it makes. And so the universe has been around for, or the Earth's been around for 4.5 billion years. The universe has been around for 13.7 billion or something like that. I can't even really fathom those. I've seen demonstrations of like stacks of pennies and cubes of pennies and stuff to try and demonstrate if each one of these was a year and how much time we're talking about. And it's still difficult to really think you got a handle on it. And one of the things that, I think in times when we start talking about numbers, it's just, oh, we added another zero on there, so it's like one bigger. When you're actually talking about an order of magnitude bigger, and people don't comprehend, that difference. And so when you start talking about forever, it's just, I guess it's just something you just shrug off. I mean, and I don't even know that there's a good way to combat that, because I don't know that it's possible for people to really comprehend that. I've said before, when you're up in heaven forever, aren't you going to get bored? And I used to say
exactly.
I used to say that I didn't want to live forever. I mean, I have friends who are transhumanists and trying to find ways for us to actually live forever in reality, for realsies. And I used to say that I wouldn't want that. That the fact that it ends is what, for me, imparts some value. Now, I've changed my mind on that. I no longer think that's the case. I'd prefer to live just about as long as I possibly could, because one of the things about living in a dynamic universe is that it's very difficult to comprehend ever getting bored, because you would, even after you surveyed everything would have changed in the time that you surveyed, so there would still be more things to learn. So I would just like to survive at least until the heat death of the universe. After that,
At least until what?
Until the universe dies.
Oh. All right. And if you have time for one more thing, the other thing that I've noticed in the calls is the I think our brains, and this is just my own little hypothesis, but our brains just, if we don't understand something, we want to plug something in, and there's even optical illusions that are kind of based on that. But when theist callers call in and they'll say, well, there had to be something designed, I think we need to maybe approach that mindset differently, as in, I love how you guys say why, and it stumbles upon them. I think most of them just plow right through it without thinking, but I was thinking if you just stop them and say, hey, I understand that you want to plug this in, but stop and think for a second, why?
Yeah. We're most definitely uncomfortable with not knowing, and it kind of highlights the different approaches between science and faith. And this discomfort with not knowing, faith attempts to plug in these gaps with unsupported assertions in order to ease people's minds about, oh, there is some answer, and even if I don't really understand it, God does, or I'll find out some other day, or I can just plug in this magic thing. And science, on the other hand, recognizes this discomfort we have with not knowing, and it actually go out and find out what the actual answers are, and acknowledges that until such time as we have a good reason to think that we have the best explanation, that we're going to get at this moment, that the answer is I don't know. And it's becoming comfortable with acknowledging that you don't know is important. And the only way that I've been able to do it, and the way that I've encouraged other people to be able to do it, when they ask about, how do I teach kids, and I've said before, you can teach them how to think and not what to think, and be prepared when they ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, not just to say, I don't know, but to say, I don't know, but let's see if we can go find out, to kind of foster that yearning for discovery and that inquisitive nature about the universe.
Yeah, I think that's, I have an 8-year-old son, and I think having him ask me a question that I don't have the answer to, and then having him see how I handle that is one of the most important things I can teach him. Because, instead of making something up or, plugging something comfortable in to fill the gap, I ask him to, get involved with finding the solution with me. Sometimes I know where to find the answer, but I want him to help me find the answer, as to gain experience doing that.
Right. So thanks a lot for the call, Chris.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
All right. We'll go with Estan in Woodridge, New Jersey. Thanks for waiting. Hello? Oh, I didn't push the button right. Let's try this. Hey, my phone box has stopped working. So can you put line 4 on the air? Oh, I didn't push the button right. There we go. Estan, you there?
Yes, I am. How are you? Matt and Aaron, it's Esther Ann. I'm in Woodridge, New Jersey. And my question is, why, as a community of atheists, do we spend so much time debating with creationists like Eric Hovind and Cy Ten, and instead of reaching out to the more mild believers? And I'm not even talking moderate. When I say mild believers, it's those Roman Catholics that go to church on Christmas and Easter and, have a smile on their face anyway, and they sort of believe, but they don't have they're not quite sure, and maybe they don't really care too much. But if they had someone to talk to, they may join forces, and we can get a little bit bigger in number. That's my question. And then after you answer the question, I'd like to share an example on how this actually worked and saved my marriage, because my husband is a mild believer.
Myself, I've I've often wanted to take the mainstream, the middle of the road, the moderate believer. It used to be, once upon a time, that everybody understood that you had to have some acceptance and understanding of science, and at the same time, practically everybody had some kind of vague impression of a spiritual afterlife. And that since then, I mean, things have actually become far more polarized in this country. The number of religious people is in decline, but the number of creationists, which is a form of religious extremists far on the fringe, is actually on the rise. So when you compare these statistics, what you get is that you're losing the moderate believers. And where you had moderate believers, you have the mainstream whose money and votes are being manipulated by the radical fringe. And these people, I'm sorry to say, will not read a Chick tract and don't even know they exist. They won't watch the Trinity Broadcast Network. They don't care what Pat Robertson said. I would love to get mainstream Christians to realize what kind of a lunatic fringe is actually at the helm of their collective. Because nothing would serve our purpose as atheists or science advocates or secularists better than that.
Yeah, I could see your point, because those are the people you really have to go after, because politically they are also in power, and they run Fox News. And your moderate Christians, your middle income, like my parents' age, they swear by what Fox is putting out. So yeah, you're going after. I understand a little bit better now.
So I'd also add that, first of all, I kind of reject the premise. The question is, why are we spending time addressing these people and not these other people? I think we're addressing all of them. But you talk specifically about people who don't care too much about it, and I think that's important, because if they don't care too much about the religion, I think it's unlikely that they're going to care enough to maybe want to change. They don't necessarily value the truth as much, but the reasons that I go after it are because religions have a privileged position, because I think the truth matters. I think that what people believe affects their actions, and their actions have consequences on others as well. It inhibits progress, but I also am convinced that fundamentalists are quite often the easiest prime targets, even though it doesn't seem that case that way to a lot of people. And the reason for that is moderate and liberal theologians and people who don't care that much and don't know that much, it's not as important to them, and they live in a world where they have already rationalized away a lot of the problems. And the fundamentalists are the rigid, unbending stick of religion. And so it's much easier to find the fault that will fell that tree than it will the tree that bends. If you are convinced that Adam and Eve were actual literal people, and we can demonstrate that with actual evidence that this concept makes no sense in light of what we know about how life evolved on the planet, that's kind of difficult. If you believe that the Bible is a true and good moral guide, and then you point to the fact that the Bible very clearly sanctions slavery, and that this God was picking favorites and slaughtering people and genocide and all.
Yeah. See, that's a great thing, because they're irrational, and they go in their circular presuppositional reasoning, and they believe that the Bible is literal. But the others, even the moderates that do attend church, but they're not quite sure, and they're Christian, and they don't want to lose their tradition, but they still may believe. At least they're rational, critical thinkers that have science education, and then if they hear these type of debates, then their eyes really get opened. The example, because I don't want to take up too much time, the example that I wanted to leave with, how it helped me and my husband. Very recently, Sarah Moorhead was on Greg Bray's show, Inspiring Doubt, and my husband was listening to it with me, and she was talking with Greg how to handle a mixed marriage, and that's what I'm in and have been. I have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, and we let them learn, and I ask them to critically think about what they are learning. But yet my husband was very much, not that he was practicing and going to church, but he was very much into the Christian ways of doing things, what's acceptable, the moderate dress, what's, that type of a thing. Well, when he listened to the show with Greg and Sarah, and heard her rationale, because she was sharing how she handled it with her family.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you know what? This religion is bullshit. Oh, excuse me, on the show, I don't know.
No, you're fine. It is bullshit.
And thank you for saying so.
and I couldn't believe it, because it's been like heck for me, trying to hold my position. Nobody else in my family, everybody else is Christian. Most of them are practicing Catholics. The kids have to be like, your mommy's crazy, don't listen to your mother. I had to go through a lot. And then one show he watches, a moderate, rational thinking believer, and all of a sudden he heard somebody else besides my voice. And he's like, yeah, that's bullshit. And then I was going down to the New Jersey Humanist Network meeting down in Central Jersey. He's like, hey, you mind if I tag along with you? And I was like, no, this is awesome. You can tag along with me. I absolutely love this now. And I don't know, our relationship is improving. The kids, you see the smile on their faces, when God's brought up and all, at my parents. So it really does help people out there.
Absolutely.
When there are more moderate talks, like Sarah was talking on Greg's show. That's why I said there's a need for it too.
Absolutely.
It helps a lot of us.
I'm a fan of as many approaches as necessary. I'm never going to tell anybody to not be, or you're being too nice to believers. Well, I guess I could probably say to somebody who was bending over backwards and unwilling to even engage. But the interesting thing is that your husband, we don't know if he's actually the exception or the rule, but we do know that in many cases, when, for example, if we talked about what Westboro Baptist Church was doing, there are a ton of Christians out there who their immediate reaction is, that's not me, that's not what I believe. And so they don't realize that you're actually addressing the same thing. This is the problem of having so many different denominations using their interpretation, all pointing to the same book and the same label. It provides, the liberals and moderates provide cover for the fundamentalists and extremists. And because they recognize that they are not the fundamentalists and extremists, they kind of get on this, the things that people find objectionable about Christianity, that's not what I believe. Wrong. I object to what you believe too.
That's a cop-out.
Yeah.
Because, I think that it would be great if we can get some of these debates, like the one, I didn't watch the one you just recently did, but some of the debates.
It causes ulcers.
But if we can get them somewhere in a community center somewhere, invite the Lutherans and the Presbyterians and the Methodists and the moderate Catholics and say, just watch this. See, tell me, just listen to what they're saying here and tell me what you think. And then maybe we could get more into those philosophical conversation about what is faith, tangible, non-tangible, because they're more reasonable. You don't have to, they're not trying to trap you and win. They're actually having a discussion.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, okay, yes.
But yeah,
I can find them sometimes.
I definitely take your point. Thanks so much, Estan, for calling. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Have a good weekend.
You
whatever's
too.
left.
Bye-bye.
We got Tom in, is it Oregon?
Yeah, Myrtle Point, Oregon. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for waiting.
I got to say, I've been watching. It's the first time I've watched it. You guys have the patience of Job.
Yeah, we get screwed over just about as much as Job.
Well,
no, I'm kidding. Nobody's been screwed over as much as Job, and that's involved in our show anyway.
Well, you guys are pretty intimidating too. I don't know if I can offer any challenge at all, but I do have some questions about natural selection.
Okay, so here's one thing. None of us are biologists.
Well, same here.
And also,
it may not be so much on the biological level. I'm just wondering. I think, and I don't know if I'm quoting you or not, but natural selection is a unavoidable component of the mechanicism in evolution. Is that right?
Yeah, the Darwinian model is evolution by means of natural selection. But all that natural selection means is that, hey, you live in a world that is dynamic and has certain characteristics.
It's going to favor some individuals and not favor others based on
hey, if you blend in really well with your background, you're more likely to survive long enough to have offspring, and those offspring are going to have those traits. Whereas if you don't blend in so well with the background, you're more likely to be killed before you get to have offspring. And so over a long period of time, changes are driven by natural selection. And by the way, the world we live in is dynamic. So what was favored or not selected against 3 million years ago, 2 million years ago, is different from what might be favored or selected against now. That's it. That's all natural selection is.
Okay, I guess this is where my question is, and I've done a little bit of this on some Facebook debate pages, and I just get called an idiot a lot, so this might be really stupid, but what is the source of natural selection? Does it have a source?
The physical facts about reality are natural selection. I'm not quite sure
the
what you mean by
environment
source.
in which these individuals find themselves.
So natural selection
it seems like that's more of the effect of natural selection, and I'm just wondering if it has like a gene source or
The effect is whether or not the individual reproduces or not. The cause is, what sort of environmental factors, weather. Yeah, the weather,
Hey, this animal had, grew more fur and survived better in a colder climate, and another one didn't. That is a part of natural selection. Hey, this animal had features that allowed it to survive when another one didn't. It's not, natural selection is not like this hovering entity source to say, oh, you live and you die. It's just descriptive. It's not prescriptive. It is descriptive of what happens. That there's nobody picking and choosing which communities, which populations live and die, but this is a result of what happened in the natural world. Weather changed. Communities were isolated, and therefore that caused inbreeding or changes in this. There's no, the source is nature, but it's not like evolution has a goal.
Conscious, right.
That's kind of where I'm going here. It seems like I read, like in Dawkins's book, The God Delusion, that natural selection has attributes of a mind, like it makes decisions.
No.
It's elegant. Those kind of things.
Elegant is not an attribute of a mind.
These are metaphors, and don't read too much into them.
Yeah. So this idea that you could look at almost anything as having the attributes of a mind. In a dynamic world where things are interacting, you could look at it as if decisions are being made, but that's not what's happening, and that's certainly not what Dawkins is happening. And by the way, if you want to understand natural selection, don't read The God Delusion. Read one of the 17 other books that Richard's written about evolutionary biology. From The Selfish Gene, The Extended Phenotype. It's probably not 17 books. Read Jerry Coyne's Why Evolution is True, and these other things, because scientists, when they're we're not always good at describing and communicating science to the general public who may not understand it. And so occasionally we will talk about things, not we, because I'm not a scientist, but scientists will talk about things in a metaphoric sense and try to make it digestible. When you talk about DNA, for example, there are plenty of scientists who will say DNA is like the code or the book of life. Well, it's not actually a book, and it's not a code in the sense that it was communicated by a mind. What it is information that follows the laws of physics and chemical interactions that allow reproduction of deoxyribonucleic acid. But intelligence.
I guess what I'm wondering, if you forgive me for butting in here, sure. It just seems like that there should be, according to evolutionary natural selection, that there should be a material source for
the material source are the physical facts about reality, the laws of nature.
I would say, what is that source? And the reason
I just told you. I just told you, Tom.
Well, let me.
The physical world is the source.
The
reason why I think of
one second. The reason why we call it natural selection is not to focus on the selection, but to focus on the natural, because it could be the case that there's nothing that determines whether or not a particular genetic code is passed on. Maybe it's just arbitrary. This one lives, this one dies.
The model of evolution by means of natural selection is saying, no, it's not arbitrary. It's not that this group lived for no particular reason or this group died for no particular reason. It's this one was more suited to the environment that it found itself in at that time. That's all we're saying, is that the facts about nature, which could be temperature, other living beings, predatory nature, isolation, anything, those facts are what determined which ones were more likely to live and which ones were more likely to die. That's it.
Okay, well, I guess my questions go, I kind of get more questions. I know you're about into the show, and I appreciate you having me on. It seems like in light of all that, and making natural selection makes those adjustments, artificial selection is selection by design, right?
Yeah, that's how we got all the different dog breeds from wolves.
Yeah, and different plants and all that kind of stuff. It just seems like it's just a little far to say that natural selection doesn't have that same kind of mind.
No. The thing is,
that's the point.
Artificial selection demonstrably has a mind that is making selections. Natural selection does not demonstrably have a mind. Now, you could argue that what we're calling natural selection is in fact a mind, but you would need to demonstrate that. That's what the intelligent design community has consistently tried and failed to do. But just because one type of selection is based on a mind and another one does not appear to be based on a mind, doesn't mean that you're justified in claiming that it looks like it might be a mind, so we're going to call it that.
Well, I'll work on enhancing the argument a little bit more. I sure appreciate you letting me air my concerns on this and refining them a little bit. I'm interested in immaterial things and trying to...
How do you know there are any immaterial things?
What's that?
Well, okay, we could talk about abstract concepts.
Well, I got one for you if you got a minute.
Well, we're already over time, so sure, I got a minute.
Okay, I've tried this one online too. It's and you probably heard it before. I think you've heard about every argument. I've watched you a little bit on YouTube.
We've heard a lot of them.
Yeah, you have. You have. I appreciate you taking extra time. Are there laws of science?
Are there laws of science? You'd have to...
Yeah, laws of physics.
So one of the things is that when we talk about laws, we have to define what we're talking about, because laws tend to be viewed as prescriptive, even though some of them are descriptive. So, like the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit was a prescriptive law, basically saying thou shalt not go over 45, so we're going to call it a law in the sense of man's law. The laws of nature that we tend to label that way are not prescriptive in the sense that somebody said the speed of light in a vacuum has to be this. Instead, we're describing that this is the case and it appears to be immutable or locally immutable.
It's a way to summarize facts is really what it's about.
Okay, well, I guess that's why I'm interested in that the laws of gravity and centrifugal force, the laws that were necessary for creation, for example, they actually existed prior to man. Man didn't discover them, right?
Man did discover them, man didn't invent them, is what you mean.
Okay, but they did exist before man.
So far as we can tell, I mean, we don't have a time machine.
You know, the laws, as we understand them, are models and concepts, right? Matter has behavior and properties based on the physics of and the chemistry, right? So that stuff all existed long before us.
My question is it Dan?
Don.
Don, I'm sorry. My question is since gravity existed and maybe the laws associated with it prior to man, and let's just say at the point of the Big Bang, for example, why is it such a far-fetched idea among atheists to think that those laws had to exist that those laws couldn't exist prior to the Big Bang, for example?
Well,
and therefore in a mind as well.
Okay, so you asked just a monster question right there. So here's the thing.
I'm a little nervous, so came out.
Here's the thing. Is there good reason to think that gravity operated pretty much the way it does now before there were any human minds to recognize this? Yes, because it's descriptive of how all bodies move. So the formation of planets and other things.
Right.
The question that you asked, though, is why is it so ridiculous to think that gravity existed before the Big Bang? Well, it may be because before the Big Bang is a nonsense question, because we talk about things in terms of local space-time, and we cannot get back to the Big Bang or before the Big Bang. We can't investigate beyond the Planck time, because that's when the math that we have to describe things breaks down. So, so we can't describe. We can't. Tom, wait. We cannot describe what there was or if there was anything before the Big Bang. But the second part of your question is not only why is it absurd to think that gravity existed before the Big Bang, and the answer to that is because gravity is a description of our local space-time and does not necessarily apply before that. That's why it's absurd to claim that it was existed before that. But you went a step further, which is why is it absurd to claim that it's part of the mind? Well, because we have absolutely no evidence for that, and it is beyond our capacity to investigate. It's like saying, hey, we know that people live in houses, so here's a house, or something that looks like a house. It looks like a house from the outside. How do I know it's not just a solid block, that it's the densest matter, that it's, some kind of physical construct inside of that house that leads to an alternate dimension? How do I know these things? Well, you don't. But the time to believe that that house is completely solid is after you've investigated and demonstrated that's the case. The time to believe that that house, when you open the door, leads you to an alternate dimension is after you've discovered and demonstrated that. If the facts about our local spacetime are the product of a mind, then that needs to be demonstrated before there's justification to believe.
Well, I think there's a category error here, and that is, we have this mental model, which is the laws of physics, or whatever, the laws of gravity, or whatever, and it's not, the behavior isn't there because somebody thought it into existence, right? The behavior is there because that's the emergent property of matter, right? And this idea that it needs to have a mind in order to create it is wrong, because we're just describing what we see. We're describing this behavior. We're not trying. There isn't any mechanism or any idea that it's caused into existence by somebody thinking it.
And see, I won't go that far. I won't say it's wrong. I'll say it hasn't been demonstrated to be the case.
Right.
And the time to believe it is after.
I appreciate you guys staying later. I guess, and you might want to blast me on this one, but it seems to me that there is a certain amount of faith on both sides here. I believe that, that God is...
Wait, what faith are we exercising?
Well, just a second. You don't believe that anything supernatural existed, right?
Because we have yet to see the evidence.
Hang on. Hey, I do not believe. That is not the same as I believe the supernatural doesn't exist.
So you do not believe in...
I am not convinced that the supernatural is real. How is that an exercise of faith to not be convinced of something?
That's a good way of putting it. I'll figure it out.
Damn right. We'll see you next time.
Well, we're going to jump right in with both feet, because the phrasing of this particular question interested me. Enoch in Pennsylvania wants to know whether or not, or why he shouldn't just believe whatever makes the most sense to him. So welcome, Enoch. You're on with Jim and Matt. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Not too bad. Yeah. How can we? So, is that accurately your question, or is there more to it? Just why should, are you wondering why you just shouldn't believe whatever makes the most sense?
Yeah. So basically, to me personally, it just makes more sense to believe that there's a all-powerful being that created everything than to believe it happened by chance.
Well, see,
I don't know, but since we don't know,
you set up a false dichotomy.
Why don't?
You've set up, it makes more sense that God did it than that it all happened by chance. Well, irrespective of which of those makes sense, those aren't the only options. And maybe the right answer is to say you don't have enough information to believe that you have any good understanding of how the universe came to be. So why believe either one? You don't have to commit to something, right?
You don't have to, but I mean, it makes more sense.
Do you think it's a good idea to commit when you like? I don't have to commit to a belief on who's going to win the game, whatever game we're talking about between Team A and Team B. I don't have to commit to a belief at all. Do you think it's a good idea for me to commit before I have enough information to make the decision? On who's going to win the game, whatever game we're talking about.
No.
Then stop doing it. Then stop doing that when it comes to a God. If you admit, which you did already, that you don't have enough information to make a decision, then your position should be, I don't know whether or not there's a God. I'm not convinced there's a God because there hasn't been sufficient evidence to convince me that there's a God, and I will be convinced that there's a God as soon as there is sufficient evidence.
Right. And it makes the most sense to me that I should believe that I have $1 million in my bank account. Should I run around and act as if I have $1 million in my bank account? Or will that lead me into seriously negative consequences?
Actually.
Okay,
Pardon?
Go ahead.
So, yeah, I don't think it can't be proven, but I just think it seems like it's more likely that that's the case.
How did you determine that it's more likely? How did you determine that it's more likely God than something other than God?
Because it doesn't make sense that the universe could come about on its own.
Who said the universe came about at all, or that it came about on its own? The issue is, did a God do it? And you just say, that makes more sense. But when I ask you why it makes more sense, your answer is, because it doesn't make sense for something else to have happened. What reason do you have to think that the best explanation for existence is that there's a God?
It just, things can't come about by themselves.
Prove that. How do you know that?
We've never seen it happen before.
Actually, that's not correct. We have at the quantum level.
Have we ever seen a God before? Have we ever seen a God do anything? Because you just defeated your own argument in the same way that we haven't seen something come from nothing or something create itself in the limited scope that you're talking about. We also haven't seen a God do anything. So that means that you shouldn't believe that there's a God, right? What's wrong with just saying you don't know? Why is it that you're so desperate to say, and by the way, every time you address this question, you do a false dichotomy. You say it's either God or it happened by chance. It's either God or it created itself. There may be an explanation for the origin of the universe that is neither the simplistic created itself nor God did it, right? There are other options that maybe you don't know about, right?
True, yeah.
Okay, so why are you so desperate to make a decision now when you admit that you don't have good reason or evidence to support the conclusion you're reaching?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm so desperate per se. It's just, it seems like it's...
Do you care whether or not your beliefs are likely to be true?
Yes.
Then you should, when somebody says, do you believe there's a God? Your answer should be, I don't know. Do you care? Because that's the truth.
Yes.
Then you should, when somebody says, do you believe
Okay.
there's a God? Your answer should be, I don't know. I mean, if you care about whether your beliefs are true, you can't just go, well, this is what makes the most sense to me. And here's the defeater for this really quickly. Once upon a time, it made really good sense to people that lightning came from Zeus. Do we think lightning comes from Zeus now? Once upon a time.
No, because we have a better explanation.
Yeah, because we have a better explanation. But all those people who believed all those for all those years, they would be sitting around going, why shouldn't I just believe what makes the most sense to me? It makes the most sense to me that Zeus is there. And the answer is because you don't have enough reason to reach that conclusion, and you could be wrong. And if you are convinced of something, and you're wrong, how much time are you going to spend looking for the right answer? Because you don't think you're wrong.
I would still look for, if more evidence comes in or whatever, and we have different. I mean, I'm still gonna look for other options if they present themselves.
Okay, well, right now, the best empirical evidence that exists, matter of fact, all of the available empirical evidence suggests that there's no evidence that a God created anything or that a God was required to create anything.
suggests that there's no
Okay.
evidence
Well,
that a god
that basically answers my question.
was required to create anything. Okie doke.
Okay.
Thanks for calling, Enoch.
All right, thank you. Yep.
And the something from nothing doesn't quite work at the quantum level because we do see particles come into existence without cause and from basically nothing.
And I
So-
completely disagree with and reject that. I think the description is that we see particles doing things that we don't have an explanation for. The ex nihilo, something from nothing, there's no nothing. You can't act on a nothing. Nothing can't, there's nothing. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other interesting topic is the definition of nothing. The physicists don't really have one that does not include the quantum. I hate to use the word quantum world, but I'm a piker, so I'll use it.
Yeah.
And I'll let the quantum physicist scream about it. But yeah, it's just a lot of that stuff starts to go away when you start getting into some of the quantum mechanics. So yeah,
Cool. It's a little complicated, but I'm gonna stay away from it largely.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. I'm Matt Dilloney, and joining me this week after an absence far too long, Martin Wagner, one of the previous hosts of the show. Good to have you back.
Nice to be back. Interesting to walk into this place after.
Some things have changed. I'm
Couple
pretty sure the
years.
cameras are still the same. And
Same old building. A lot of new faces for me, anyway. So, hi,
So-
new faces.
We're live, as always. Today is Sunday, November 12th, 2006. This is the Atheist Experience, sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road. That's 11:30, except for this morning when we went to Ventana del Sol, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. Also, we host a lecture series. We're done with the lectures for this year. The lecture series will begin again in January, and instead of the third Sunday of the month, for those of you who've gotten used to that, we'll be shifting to the first Sunday of the month for the rest of that year. Although there may be other changes. We've had a really good season of lectures. We finished off with Robin Matthews coming to talk to us about teaching evolution in public schools. At this morning's meeting of Ventana del Sol, we had a guest speaker, former Air Force Colonel, talking to us about the military atheism, agnostic, freethinkers movement, how religion in the military has changed over time. We had a really great lecture, kind of short lecture, but it was entertaining. We had a good chance to take a look at Ventana del Sol, find out if it's going to suit our purposes, and had a pretty good turnout. So thanks to all you who showed up there. We'll be looking for feedback from members and non-members. This program, as we said, is live. It's interactive. We'll have a telephone number up for you shortly. Done over public access TV with a chance for us to interact with the public, and we can talk about a variety of different issues, religion, answer questions and discuss public events or current events and issues that are relevant to the public. The audio portion of this program is available for download and podcast. You can visit our website, www.atheist-community.org. There's a link there to the Atheist Experience TV show where you can get more information about the podcast. And in addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. And we'll be live again this coming Saturday. That's hosted by Jeff D., co-hosted by Dennis Lubay, and features Russell Glasser and myself. November 18th, 2 o'clock Central. The interesting thing about that show, instead of actually having live calls as we do on this one, we run an interactive IRC chat client and have regular listeners who contribute to the conversation, although albeit on a delay. But we have a lot of fun discussed comments on that show that are more, I guess, whereas this one's kind of an atheism 101 and an interaction with the public. The nonprofit show is a little bit more tuned for atheists. So we discuss issues more from an atheist point of view and try and get feedback from people in the chat room. In addition to that, we run a number of social events. Thursday nights, we have Atheist Happy Hour at Ninfas on Anderson near 183 and I-35. That begins at 7:30. It's a chance to come down and have a meal or get a drink and talk to some of the members of the Atheist Community of Austin, get to know some people, discuss issues, whatever. And we also have been going, the cast and crew of this show, go to dinner at Threadgills on Riverside. This show's over at 6 o'clock. We normally get down there about 6:30, sometimes closer to 6:45. All of our events are open to any atheist or atheist-friendly people. You do not have to be a member to attend. We don't discriminate. I've had really good discussions with reasonable Christians and people of other religions at dinner, and we enjoy that. But if you're coming down to preach or proselytize or provoke, just hang on. We'll give you the number. You can call in and explain why you think you're right and we're wrong, or whatever else is on your mind. Because we'd still like to have an enjoyable dinner and time out, and I don't come running into your church and yelling that there is no God. So plus Threadgills might not enjoy that too much. Bunch of good folks helping us out there. Anybody who doesn't get a chance to get through on the phone today is free to email tv@atheist-community.org. That email address goes to everybody involved with the show. We can't guarantee that we'll answer every email we get, because now that we're podcasting around the world, we get emails from around the world and far too many to answer. But we do read all of them. Any comments, criticisms, suggestions, anything like that, we try to take to heart and incorporate in the show when we can. And for a lot of the questions that we get, I've been directing people to visit our website and visit the frequently asked questions portion of the website, just so that we don't spend 20 minutes every show explaining what is atheism and how can you be moral without God. Not that we won't answer those questions, because we answer them almost every week anyway. Yeah, I'd just rather not answer them 3 or 4 times in one show. Yeah. So that's about it for the announcements. We can go ahead and put the number up. And how long has it been since you've actually done the show?
Well, let's see. I left in March of ’04.
Wow.
And then Ashley had me back once as a guest, maybe like 6 or 7 months after that, towards the end of that year. But I think so it's been about 2 years. I'd kind of pulled away from the whole activism thing, mainly for career-oriented reasons, not really because I wasn't still interested in doing it. And in fact, lately, I think I've become a lot more energized in really trying to get back into it even more, just because atheism suddenly has a much higher profile now.
Sure.
And it's...
the tide may be turning a little.
Might be. I don't know that we're winning necessarily over, too many of the converted, but I think that the idea is that at least people are aware that there's another point of view, and that to those of us who hold that point of view aren't afraid to express it. And in a sense, I think what's recently been going on with current events, the election results and everything, we've had something like 6 years of just about one-party rule in this country, and with a lean towards very conservative, Christian-based politics, and America as a whole, I think, has just recently given that the thumbs down. We've had a taste of that and we don't like it. And so there is a bit more of a swing towards, not so much towards the far left of the spectrum, but definitely towards more moderation. In a lot of things, certainly there's a lot more work to be done and room to move in that regard. But I think that, certainly the extremism, Christian extremism that had been taking over American politics in the last few years was not to the taste of the American people. As much as they think that they are the American mainstream, clearly that wasn't the case. So I think in the midst of all of this, there is it's now just become, there's more of a public awareness that there's a significant godless population out there, and it's not such a bad thing, and to have this exchange of ideas.
Yeah, since I wasn't around when you were doing the show.
And it was interesting. We really just met, didn't we? About a week ago. I'd known of you because I've been listening to the nonprofits. So and I've been reading your posts on the mailing lists and everything for years. So I know that Matt's been around and has kind of really taken the reins of a lot of things, and you're a very active member. But we just met.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
It was funny too, because we talked about meeting, and you showed up at the right after our lecture. Last Sunday, so it was the first time we'd actually met in person.
Yeah.
Which kind of gave me an excuse when I had to fill in for the show.
There you go.
It's actually Russell suggested too, and I was like, why the hell did I think of that with the Hallmark?
It was just sort of out of the blue, because we both knew of each other, but we just hadn't really. So 2 generations of atheist experience comes together.
And actually, while
we're like
the show,
Kirk and Picard.
When you were first doing the show, I wasn't even an atheist.
Really?
And if I would have watched the show, I don't know that I would have called in to challenge anybody, because I've said before that I was a Christian for 20 some odd years, and I never try and put a real number on it, because I don't
I don't know whose definition of true Christian I would use, including what my own was at the time. I have no idea how I would have defined it.
Right.
And there was definitely a period of time where I was not religious, although I still believed. And probably around the time you were doing the show a lot, I was still in the, I believe there's a God and all this, but I don't know specifically what I believe, and I hadn't really started digging into it. Where are we going next? Who are we going to talk to?
Alan.
Alan on line 6 in sunny California. I hope it's sunny. Maybe it's not. How you doing, Alan? You're on with Jenna and Matt.
Hi.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Not too bad.
So, good. Well, as you probably saw, I think I figured out one of the reasons why I seem to not be able to let go of my belief in God.
Okay.
And I think it's because, and I'm not asking for empathy, but I suffer from borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
So my judgment isn't always the best. And there's been several times where I should have either been killed or I should have been in trouble, and things intervened. And at first I would initially get mad, like, why can't I just be in charge of my own fate? But then I think to myself, maybe it's God, maybe it's not. But still, I don't buy into the Bible at all. And part of me is like, dude, this is irrational. But I think because I have borderline personality disorder and my judgment is poor and I've experienced a lot of failures, I'm not so much more so afraid of going to hell. I'm afraid of having a guide, or excuse me, not having a guide to intervene at the last minute when I mess up.
Do you think that you have a guide that would intervene at the last minute?
I'll be honest, I'm not 100% convinced at all. You got me there.
Yeah, I mean, so if you don't have a good reason to think you have one, then you don't have a very good reason to think you'd be losing one. And this is not relevant to the show. This is entirely personal. Can I ask you a rather strange question about your condition?
I understand, sure.
One, I don't know whether or not you're being treated, but do you have periods where you completely shut down? Like are catatonic and don't want to interact with people?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I am
Dissociate?
antisocial.
You mean dissociate, or do you mean?
No, we don't need to go into it. It's not relevant here. It's just, it's a thing. So anyway, on the actual subject, if you're sitting here saying, hey, I don't believe the Bible, and I'm not sure if I believe this other stuff, I'm just terrified of the potential consequences of my own decision. It'd be really nice to think that there was somebody there who was going to rescue me right before I did something that was too bad. Yeah, that'd be really nice. Who wouldn't want, hey, you're getting ready to really screw up, let me step in and help out?
You know how you find that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm listening.
You build a community around yourself, that you have people that you trust their judgment, and you can say, hey, check me when I do this, check me when I do that. If I'm saying something that's wrong, let me know. Build yourself a community that can help you do that. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's exactly where I was going. I don't have any reason to think that there's a guardian angel, but I do have friends. And the more I shut myself off from friends, the less capable they are to say, hey, you're fucking up. It's difficult, and what it means is that sometimes even when you don't feel like it, it's probably in your best interest to find some people and to build that network with, just doesn't have to be massive. Probably shouldn't just be one. It probably should be 2 or 3 people that you can find, that you can trust with stuff to say, hey, and especially if you already know, if you know that there are areas where your decision making is flawed. In the same way, if you're dealing with somebody who's an alcoholic but who's actually struggling with it, hey, I know that when it comes to these kind of decisions, I'm gonna probably screw up, or I'm at bigger risk. Can you let me know if you start to see that? And so like if Jenna had come to me with something like that, and let's say the whole ACA was getting ready to go out to a bar and hang out, if I thought for a second that would be problematic for her, then as a friend, I would say, hey, do you really want to do this? Or better, I would say, can we move this someplace so that Jenna can go with us? Now, as it turns out, I don't have any reason to suspect that is a problem, because you're fairly well grounded, and you haven't told me.
Well, I don't go to bars.
Yeah, you haven't told me, hey, here's an area where I want you specifically to do that. But you have networks of people that you do that. I mean, I don't want to give people the impression that
I do.
I'm not necessarily part of Jenna's network. We're friends and we're on the show together. But yeah, building that. Build your own guardian angels. And rather than relying on a possible fictional one, now all of a sudden you don't have to hang on to any religious baggage, and you have something that is demonstrably real to help you instead of something that maybe doesn't exist.
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense. And I appreciate it. That gives me a lot to think about. I guess another reason why I tend to let it go, and this is totally childish and selfish of me, and it may make me sound like a monster. I think another reason, and other people don't seem to talk about this, I think another reason why so many of us want to cling on to this belief is because, let's be honest, most people would like the idea of being God, being in charge of every aspect of their life. And the only thing closest to that is to, quote unquote, have a relationship with that being. But I guess that's more so for my insecurity than more so belief.
Kind of depends on what your God model is. I would have never looked at it. That basically, the type of Christianity that I was particularly raised in, it's not like it makes me any closer to being a God. It's because God ultimately has his plan, and he's going to do what he wants to do, and he's made his decisions about my life and everything else. It's not like I'm, maybe Mormonism, where, when you're done, you get to be your own God with your own planet type thing. Yeah.
Which religion are you coming from?
I come from a non-denominational Christian background here in California. And what I mean by being my own God isn't necessarily like, oh, I'm going to be divine and I have people worshiping. No, that sounds terrible. Ugh. What I mean is not having to worry about anything anymore.
Yeah.
And it's childish, I know. But that's what I mean. I come from.
I try not to use childish as a pejorative anymore, because what it is it's human. And while we look at some things and say, oh, this is immature, okay, so what? It doesn't, label childish, immature, whatever else. My concern is it reasonable? Is it rational? And is it something that's productive that's going to lead you towards something better? But you look like you disagree.
Well, I wouldn't say it's childish. I'd say it's human.
That's what I just said.
Well, but the reason I try to clarify that is because, like, when they say let go, let God, like you say that we want to just be able to not worry about it. Like, I think that there's good behind that. There's, to be able to let go and not be worried about everything all the time is the only way you can make it to tomorrow.
Yeah, well.
Like, I just mean that there's a balance. There are things to worry about. There are things to let go. The let go, let God is because we are human and we are naturally wired to stress. And so it's good to have something on the outside of us telling us stop that for a little bit because you're obsessing.
I just realized I don't have my little soundboard push button out here, and it doesn't matter because it doesn't. I would love for it to have like the "Let It Go" from Frozen.
I like what you brought up, Jenna. Let go, let God intervene. Well, growing up, I was always hearing like people say, "Oh, let God handle it all." And my question would be, how come God lets bad things happen?
Right.
Well, you can't expect God to do all the work. I'm like, are you fucking kidding? French.
Yeah.
Well, just do the best you can, and then what happens will happen.
That wasn't French, by the way. It would be le fuck.
Yeah. I think you're doing all right, Alan.
All right. Well, thank you both. And even though at this point I'm still an agnostic Christian, I do appreciate what you guys do with the atheist community of Austin, because I am staunch on separation of church and the state, and you guys seem to be the ones that do that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
To this community.
Keep thinking. Keep calling.
Yeah, maybe not quite as much on like AXP calls. We don't get into as much church separation as perhaps we should or would like to. But
You might like to call Truth Wanted. They have a lot of time to talk and break things down.
But outside of this, I tend to do a lot of work with other organizations when I can on church state separation issues, and American Atheist does it, Freedom from Religion Foundation does it.
And we just started GB3 again, so we're talking about that kind of thing.
Pick another caller? Sure, let's go on. We got, is it Josh?
Yeah.
Hello, how you doing?
Pretty good. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah, just had a question for you guys. I agree with everything you guys are saying about this priest molestation and, everything that goes on in the Catholic Church, but I just wanted you guys to understand that there actually is a big space between the Catholic Church and Christianity actually has nothing to do with religion.
Well,
And
hang on,
Really?
hang on, really quick, because I didn't actually bring all the data with me. But when we're talking about priests, pedophile priests, we're not just talking about Catholics. The corruption with the cover-ups does exist in the Catholic Church, but if you go online and do research, you'll find that it is prevalent within Protestant churches as well.
More widespread.
So they and the difference is, and this is just because of some limiting statistics, is that the Protestant targets aren't boys as often as much as the Catholic targets are, and the Protestant targets aren't covered up as easily and as often as the Catholic targets are. But by no means have Catholics cornered the market on abusing children.
I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because we don't need to be picking on the Catholics alone. We need to be painting a broader brush.
And on your other point about whether or not Christianity has anything to do with religion, congratulations, you have opinion number 983,625 on what true Christianity is. And until somebody can actually demonstrate which one of all those opinions is correct, they're all just as empty and meaningless.
Well, I'm sorry that you guys feel that way, but, the thing is, how can you say just because all these things happen in the world that there's just absolutely no God? I mean,
I
how
didn't
does
say
it
that.
eliminate God from anything?
I didn't say that. The burden of proof is on the person making the claim. If you're going to make a claim that a God exists, that this supernatural entity exists, you actually have to prove it, because the default position is not to believe that there's some supernatural being when there's absolutely no evidence to support it.
Do you believe in evolution?
Do I believe in evolution?
Science supports evolution, right?
I believe that evolutionary theory is scientifically supported and is a reasonable, natural explanation for the origins of species, yes.
Can a scientist explain why there's a monkey that can sit next to you and you look a whole lot different?
Sure, because we didn't descend from monkeys. Monkeys and humans descended from a common ancestor. You really need to go to Talk Origins. You really need to do a lot more research into these really simple, basic questions.
Can your religion explain why chimps and humans have 98% the same DNA?
Yeah.
Yes, because God created us.
Ah, God,
I mean,
the all-encompassing non-answer.
Did you ever just look up at the sky or anything, or look around you and the nature and all that kind of thing?
I've looked all over the place, and I have yet to
how
find a God.
How do you breathe every day? How did we come about? How is there
muscles contract my lungs? Go read a book. Some of these, there's an FAQ at our website. You can go to www.atheist-community.org. You can check out the FAQ. There are tons of information available online. You can go to Talk Origins to get information on evolution. But the thing is that, as I said earlier, even if the evolutionary theory turns out to completely be wrong, that does absolutely nothing to support your case that a God, or your God in particular, actually exists. You have to actually provide some information from that. You can't come up with these non-answer arguments of, haven't you ever looked at the stars and, well, I can't explain it, so God did it.
Yeah, just because you don't know something doesn't mean there's a God, right? God isn't your ignorance.
Partially for the benefit of that caller, but more so for Randy, who called earlier. One of my favorite authors of all time, and probably one of the people who had the most impact, was Robert Ingersoll. And
he was a pretty famous lecturer in the 1800s.
Yeah, he's known as the Great Agnostic. But
he'd go from city to city and give lectures, and people would he was very, very popular.
And hugely popular, and friends with ministers and politicians, and he delivered a Republican keynote address at one time and everything else. Dennis showed up at the Nonprofits yesterday with one of my favorite quotes from Ingersoll. It's a little lengthy, but it's kind of relevant to what this guy was talking about earlier with, our last caller with what is true Christianity versus religion, and the caller earlier talking about just what Jesus said. So if you'll give me just a minute, I'll rattle off this from Robert Ingersoll. You have to remember this was written in the late 19th century, and people wrote it and spoke a lot better, and I'm probably not going to do this justice, but here goes. Is Christ our example? He never said a word in favor of education. He never even hinted at the existence of any science. He never uttered a word in favor of industry, economy, or any effort to better our condition in this world. He was the enemy of the successful, of the wealthy.
Dives was sent to hell not because he was bad, but because he was rich. Lazarus went to heaven not because he was good, but because he was poor. Christ cared nothing for painting, for sculpture, for music, nothing for any art. He said nothing about the duties of nation to nation, of king to subject, nothing about the rights of man, nothing about intellectual liberty or the freedom of speech. He said nothing about the sacredness of home. Not one word for the fireside, not a word in favor of marriage, nor maternity. He never married. He wandered homeless from place to place with a few disciples. None of them seemed to have been engaged in any useful business, and they seemed to have lived on alms. All human ties were held in contempt. This world was sacrificed for the next. All human effort was discouraged. God would support and protect. At last, in the dusk of death, Christ, finding that he was mistaken, cried, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? We have found that man must depend on himself. He must clear the land. He must build the home. He must plow and plant. He must invent. He must work with hand and brain. He must overcome the difficulties and obstructions. He must conquer and enslave the forces of nature to the end that they may do the work of the world.
How wonderful.
Ingersoll is just always one of my favorites, but yeah. If you go to infidels.org, and we'll get that link up for people, in their library section, there's everything Ingersoll's ever written, and I strongly recommend reading
Not
an
just
essay.
Ingersoll, complete works of
sure.
a lot of other.
There's
very good
Voltaire,
authors.
Bertrand Russell, but I strongly recommend an essay called "The Truth," which is his entire indictment of the entire Bible.
Okay.
And
Thomas Paine, who wrote The Age of Reason in the 1700s, wrote a great. He was a deist, by the way. He wrote this great article on why God would never use the Bible as a communication mechanism.
yeah, that's just one of the most philosophically important arguments with regard to religion, that any sufficiently supremely wise, intelligent being who wanted to communicate a message would never choose to communicate it in the limited medium of print, where things are so easily misunderstood, where context, where language changes. How could if God knew?
Prophet used to mean storyteller.
Yeah, bard. How could God thousands and thousands of years ago think, knowing what was going to happen and how languages were going to change and how the message would get muddled? How could they possibly consider, hey, I'm going to tell this guy to write a book for me? A good way to communicate the most important message you could ever possibly receive. It's absurd.
Yep.
Matt in Kokomo.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing, Matt?
What's up, guys? I'm pretty good. How about you?
Good. Pretty good.
Well, first off, I'd like to say to Matt, if I did have to believe in a God, I think you would be it. You're logical, rational, and I think, we should all...
I'll release you from any obligation.
Example. But anyway, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, the question I had was, I was grown up in a Christian household, really pretty hardcore Christian household, and once I hit about 20, I kind of I started thinking about things, and I'm like, this, there's like you, I believe in I believe that there should be like evidence, like really understandable evidence, to prove the existence in something like a God, or anything like that, and I looked like you did, and I didn't find any, and so I guess I consider myself atheist, and I've pretty much been everything but disowned by my family because of that. And anyway, the point of my call is from from a physics standpoint, I know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, and if we have some sort of energy like that in our bodies, energy like that can only be transferred. So would that be sort of like maybe a quote unquote afterlife or something? I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, what's your definition of life? I mean, if it's the biological processes that make your body able to, remain animate, then no, because once your body's not doing that anymore, then you don't have life. If it's the thoughts in your head, well, once the pattern of information stored in your brain is no longer functioning, then you don't have that either. So I would say no. can't really make a good case for an afterlife on that basis. Now you can say, that you want your body to be put in the ground where it will provide nutrients to plants. You can do that. That's sustaining some other life, but it's not you getting to continue to exist.
There's a lot of confusion when people start tossing around the word energy, because all this new age crap tends to toss around the word energy because it's prone to being used for equivocation. Yeah, there's energy and matter. So what? It's like, does a battery have an afterlife once we've drained it? The thing, what Jeff was pointing about, how you define life. Nothing about who I am, or everything about who I am, I guess, is, as far as I can tell, the product of my brain, which is, there's energy there, but there's no identifiable mechanism for after I'm dead and my body begins to decay and the whatever energy there was, dissipates, etc. That this represents me in any sense, any more than, once we've drained the battery, it has an afterlife. Yeah. I think it's more word games than anything.
I mean, one of what I think is the best arguments against the existence of a God is that we have no evidence whatsoever that any kind of consciousness can exist apart from a physical brain. Mm-hmm. And that you'll find a lot of people who believe in gods also believe in ghosts and spooks and demons and afterlives and whatnot, because that once you take that on board, sure, I mean, you could have all kinds of people floating around without any bodies, but there is no evidence whatsoever that there's any such thing.
Yeah, I think the thing that it kind of, that bothers me is, I'm alive and conscious and I'm doing things and then, I know that one day I will die and that, I've been told and believe that, if there's nothing, it's just nothing after that, like you don't be reincarnated or whatever you want to, say happens to you. Just like if there's just nothing, that's just unacceptable to me, and that's kind of scary in a way, because I want to exist, in some way.
You can, start making a list of things that are unacceptable to you. The fact that they're unacceptable does not mean they're not true. If you're concerned about living a good, long, healthy life, then the thing to do is to support research into life extension, right? Into medical technology and human life extension, because that's addressing the actual problem. Otherwise you're just in denial.
Yeah, you're saying I don't want to live in a world where I don't get to continue living. Well, how is that different from saying I don't want to live in a world where I'm not a billionaire?
True.
Yeah, there's no denying that the religious claims of afterlives it can make people feel good, just like that buying a lottery ticket and thinking about your chances to win the lottery and having those dreams and spending the money before you actually get it can make people feel good. But when you don't get it, is that suddenly unacceptable? I mean, nobody's presented any reason to think that any of us are going to exist after we're dead. And there's the quote, which I'll paraphrase, which was originally attributed to Mark Twain, when he was asked about the idea of being afraid of being dead. And I'll argue that nobody experiences being dead. He said, I was dead for 1 billion years before I was born and wasn't troubled by it one bit.
Mm-hmm. I had a friend of mine, he considers himself atheist, and he, I guess, had a brush with death. He was walking down the street on a hill, and a car, I guess the brakes went out or something, and it actually rolled over him, and he just, instantly lost consciousness, and he says he remembers, just, seeing, that light that everyone supposedly sees and being very content, where he was at, and then when he came out of it, he turned religious on me, and I was just like, it's kind of weird. Everyone, go ahead.
It happens. There are scientists who actually study near-death experience phenomena. And while we don't completely understand it, there's no reason to think that it's not just a dying brain, a malfunctioning, oxygen-deprived brain dying.
And religions have, of course, heard these stories that people report from near-death experiences, and all of the stories you hear from religions about what you're going to see when you're on your way to heaven are all based on these reports of what people actually do experience when they're having near-death experiences. But there's no way to connect the dots there between the things that go on in your brain when it's shutting down and the idea that those are really images from some real reality that you're going to after life.
Mm-hmm. I think it would probably be just the brain's way of coping with a stressful situation,
Or malfunctioning when it's oxygen deprived. I mean, it'd be like pouring sugar in the gas tank type of thing.
Right. So of course that's what you're going to hear, is stuff that sounds like that. Well, fine. The question still is there any evidence that your consciousness could exist without your body? And well, there isn't.
Yeah, and they've tested, by the way, near-death experience claims. One, people would claim they would float off the bed, etc., up towards the ceiling, but yet they could see and hear things that they shouldn't have been able to see and hear. So the simple way to test it is to put a note up on top of, for example, a bookshelf that they would be flying over, and then when they come back, ask them what the note was. They've done it for the people who've claimed astral projection and things like that, and it fails every time. The other thing to note is that people who have near-death experiences, for those who have the kind of the general, there's a light and a tunnel type thing, which to me, anybody who's fainted has probably seen a tunnel. There's a reason we call it tunnel vision in those situations, but for those people who don't experience the generic, for those people who experience specific symbolism and imagery, it almost always exactly matches the religious beliefs that they have. You don't have Hindus seeing Jesus. You don't have Protestants seeing the Virgin Mary. It almost always exactly matches the
I don't know if this report that I read, I know you probably sure on time. I want to get to other callers. I just want to say one more thing.
Sure.
I read somewhere on the internet, like I said, I don't know if it's a really reliable source, but they said that they actually, weighed somebody, an actual person, before death and after death, and they said that, there was, a big, weight difference, on the energy or something.
Yeah, it's just not true.
And that made me think,
energy doesn't have weight.
Yeah.
So, right there's, that's a big question mark.
It's the movie 7 Grams was titled after this. This is an old kind of urban legend thing that they claimed, it's the weight of the soul. And the fact is that the original experiments that this was based on were just inaccurate. I mean, you can go to Skeptic's Dictionary. It's skeptic.com, skepdic.com. I'm sure there's an entry there for 7 grams, weight of the soul, whatever.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you for taking my call, guys. I hope I haven't sounded too much of an idiot.
No,
that's all right. This is all, all this stuff is engineered to be very compelling sounding and very appealing sounding. So it's natural for people to, when they hear these kinds of ideas, to go, oh wow, maybe there's really something to that. I mean, that's why religions picked these kinds of things to say to people, because it's the stuff that we react to. But the bottom line always is there any actual evidence that this is really true?
And I could imagine a scenario like what you were talking about with the kind of post hoc explanation where somebody has a near-death experience thousands of years ago or 1,000 years ago or whatever, and terrified of what they saw, regardless of what it was, they go to their holy man and say, what happened to me? And the holy man, being the skilled liar that most of them are, says, oh, well, you saw the afterlife. And this isn't tied to any religion. I imagine this is how the mythos of afterlives kind of gained a foothold in the popular thought.
Right.
So
I felt a presence. Well, that must have been the great juju in the sky.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, there was this tunnel and a light at the end. Well, that was the light of the special place you get to go after you're gone.
Yeah. And it's no different from, I was thinking about somebody and the phone rang and it was them. Well, God wanted you to talk to them, that kind of thing. But anyway, thanks a lot, Matt. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Obviously, they're screening some new folks while we wait. But for the meantime, we have Ale. Is that Ayal or Ale in Houston?
I guess we'll find out.
Who is, I'm sorry if I mangled your name there, Ale.
The easiest way to pronounce it.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, you're live. So what's up? What can we do for you today?
So I have kind of a Jewish background, and I'm wondering if basically there's any way. I mean, currently I'm an atheist, but I'm wondering if there's any way for me to sort of keep any of that cultural background, but still remain an atheist. I'm sure that there is.
There are loads of atheist Jews. Have you never met any atheist Jews? Because we have one on the show.
Yeah, have you watched our show before when Russell is hosting? Russell Glass?
I didn't know that Russell was an atheist.
Yeah.
Or, no, not that. Sorry, that he was Jewish.
Well, there you are. Yeah, and his sister Karen, in fact, who used to be a co-host on the show, she even more than he is. I mean, she's an atheist, but she says has a great deal of fondness for all of the cultural trappings of her upbringing. Yeah, I mean, it might be a good idea just to call back when he's on and talk about that, because I'm sure you guys would get on like a house on fire. But he would be more qualified to talk about it than we would. But yeah, as far as we can tell, it's entirely possible. I can tell you something that's very similar too, which is that there are indeed, despite what Bill O'Reilly will tell you, atheists who enjoy Christmas and celebrate Christmas and call it Christmas.
Right.
Beth,
it's not a religious holiday.
Well, it's true. I mean, there is a secularized aspect of it. But at the same time, there are a number of atheists who are quite, talking about.
I would say that when it comes to
why not? It's just
when it comes to atheists who maintain their religious culture, it seems to be prevalent among the Jewish atheists and also Catholic atheists.
Right.
Okay. There are a lot of atheists.
Well, it's a very cultural religion. Both of them are.
Yeah,
both
yeah.
Are very cultural.
Exactly, and it is so great. I think it makes sense. I mean, it would be like if you moved to America, you don't have to give up your, if you immigrated here to the United States, you wouldn't need to give up all the things that you loved about your prior culture. If you came here from Germany, you could still eat German food, enjoy German music, and I think it's kind of the same. Religion is not separate from culture; it's part of a culture. So I don't think that you necessarily have to give up like the tradition aspects, the cultural tradition aspects, just because you don't believe them as literal anymore. Okay, so there is like a mythological aspect to it that you can regard, just like with Greek mythology, right? I mean, I love reading the Greek myths, but I read them like stories, but they're still fun and meaningful. And it's just like with Christmas, like Martin was talking about Christmas, and you have the whole Santa Claus thing. I don't have to believe Santa Claus is real to enjoy it or to have fun with it. And there's like a couple hosts on the show who, or at least one I know that celebrates Christmas, and their child has been told about Santa, but they've been told that it was a story. You know what I mean? This is the story of Santa Claus and Christmas, and they're not presenting it as like a truth, but it doesn't mean that you still can't have fun with it.
Sure, and I don't think that's really my problem. I think it's more about maybe participating in certain specific things that are a little odd. So, like maybe going to temple, saying a prayer, because I mean, it's part of the culture.
Well, I guess that's just going to be, it's your choice to filter, which of the the cultural events that you still wish to partake in and which ones you don't, which ones you're comfortable with. That's ultimately just going to have to be you making that judgment. But one thing that I would like to see some atheists not do is be judgmental against other atheists who do choose to maybe, hang on to, the aspect of a religious upbringing that still might, give them a good feeling, give them that sense of a culture, give them that sense of community, because that is one thing that religion does very, very well. You'll create that sense of belonging, having, another home, an extended family, as it were. It always, it surprises people, well, it surprises Christians especially when I tell them that
I don't have any negative or any bad memories or any unpleasant memories of my upbringing, being raised in the church. That's an assumption that Christians make about atheists. It's like, well, some horrible thing happened to you. No, I remember just, especially my up to early adolescence and being involved in like Sunday school activities and church stuff. It was all heaps of fun.
Same with me.
So I don't. And lately, there have been some groups getting together, some atheist groups, having these things that they call Sunday Assembly, which are patterned kind of after the church model. And it's social organization. Sometimes they'll even sing songs and do whatever.
I think there's one in here that just started up in Austin.
But the point is, immediately some atheists have been very reactionary about this, and it's like, oh, well, you're just like, it's like, look, no, it's nobody gets to police how anyone else does their atheism.
Sure.
Well, I think the media went out and just proactively dubbed it atheist church, which wasn't helpful.
No, but which you kind of have to expect. But, but I tend to expect better from other atheists, and the whole idea of, look, if folks. There are people who are lifelong atheists who haven't had this experience, and so they don't really get it, perhaps. But there are a great many atheists, in fact, I think a much larger percentage of atheists who are deconverted Christians.
Sure.
And if they miss that aspect of it, if they miss that friendship and community and belonging and thing, why can't there be secular versions of that?
Well, yeah. I mean, we have things like UU, and there's humanist groups that do, social events. I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't do this. I'm just saying we do have things like that, groups like that do offer the same sort of, that are like, Universal Unitarian doesn't require you to be an atheist, obviously. They accept anyone, but when you go to some of their services, it's just like going to a lecture.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been, and it's an interesting thing. And in the hallways, you don't see religious things. You just see all these good citizenship things and all these, how to be a good person.
We've had some ACM members do some of those.
Yeah. But when you walk in, I mean, if you didn't see how secular it was when you get in there, like the messages, you would just think I'm going to a church.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, it's your choice. Do what makes you happy.
Sure, I get that.
And
I'm wondering also if you guys noticed that there's any sort of sizable change that's progressing with maybe attitudes towards atheists in general, and sociological attitudes towards atheists by the general public.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, we have more very out celebrity atheists, which was not, probably heard of some years ago. It's like any group that is finally kind of getting a place at the table. There is certainly backlash against that. There are some people who are still very resentful of us and happy to demonize us, but guys like Bill Maher and Ricky Gervais just come right back at them with awesomeness, and so it's becoming more socially acceptable. People are feeling more comfortable being out. Our show, we're always very pleased, we kind of pat ourselves on the back a little bit when we get a nice email from someone saying you've helped me think about these things.
We get a lot of positive emails, even from theists. We get letters from people that are like, oh, thank you for your show. I appreciate it. I believe in God, but I respect what you're doing. And I mean, we don't even get, all that.
I mean, we are still the most mistrusted minority.
Yeah,
so I don't want to paint too rosy a picture about things, but at the same time, it's not, Madeleine O'Hara is, the angry, raging, woman is not now the only public face of atheism. Right. In fact, she's no longer even really known as the face of atheism. And when you've got, people like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and Jodie Foster and folks like that just coming right out and just believe in God, I think that's all bullshit. And very comfortable about it. And there's no horrible, they're still very admired and loved by the public. And people realize it's no big deal.
Right. The more people
and I try and share it with people just because I'm the same. So friends of mine and family and things like that, and I've told my family about how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But people realize I'm the same person. It was just something that happened to me. There wasn't this aha moment. I don't think it's that way for most atheists. I think it's something that happens gradually, and they don't really change, not as people. They're still the same person, same personality. They have the same morals to an extent in some cases, but it's kind of I think it's important when you can maybe share it with people, and that sort of helps break down that stigma.
Indeed it does. But thanks for calling, man. We really do appreciate
it. Thanks very much for taking the call.
Yeah, and call back some point, and we're going to move on to the next guy. So have a good week.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
So, oops, I think I lost that one. Sylvester in Beaumont, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for waiting.
Oh, no problem.
Well, did you have a question for us?
Yes, I was going to ask you if you agree with the justice system in the United States. If you think, in comparison to other places in the world, do you think it's good, average, above average?
What does this have to do with atheism?
Also, we're hearing an echo. So
I was going to go to my point because I'm dealing with justice, kind of.
So,
well, hang on. We're hearing an echo. Can you turn down whatever stream you're listening to?
Oh, okay.
When you ask us what we think about the justice system in the United States, that's such a broad topic, and I'm still hearing the echo.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you this. I called 2 weeks ago, and I believe, I don't remember who it was on the phone. I asked if all men were created equal, and the person I was speaking with said yes. I was like on the last 5 minutes on the show, I just asked the question.
Sure. So it depends on, I'm still hearing an echo. Here, I'll put you on hold. It depends on what you're actually meaning by were all men created equal, because first of all, I don't think we were created. We're not all men. But as a foundational principle of our justice system, the foundational principle is that all human beings should be considered equal in the eyes of the law, that we should strive to make sure that we are not preferencing some individuals over others without some sort of foundation. Now, if you're talking about it in a broader context, am I equal to Michael Jordan? Well, definitely not at basketball. I mean, that's just absurd. But the goal is for us supposed to be treated equally under the law. The justice should be blind to, our ethnicity and our sexual preferences, orientation, or whatever, anything like that, our religious beliefs. So yeah, that as a foundation is something that I think is a good idea.
So my question was, what is the foundation built upon? Why do we treat our fellow human beings as equals?
It's okay. Here's the simplest way to look at this, and it's called the veil of blindness. And it's about making sure that people are treated fairly. And so if you've got a cake, for example, and you want to divide it up equally among people, what you do is you have somebody cut the cake, letting them know that everybody's going to get a piece, but the person who cuts the cake gets last pick of the pieces. And that tends to make sure that because they don't know which piece they're going to get, that they strive, hopefully, to cut them fairly evenly. Another aspect of this is to design a system, whether it's a game, whether it's a justice system, where you don't know what your status is going to be entering the system. And if you operate with that veil of ignorance, you're more likely to get a system that is fair. And so the most pragmatic solution is to begin by saying, hey, I don't know where I'm going to be in this system. I don't know if I'm going to be poor or rich. I don't know if I'm going to be black, white. I don't know if I'm, Hispanic, whatever. I don't know what my religious heritage is going to be or whether I'm going to come in with, it doesn't matter. So let me design a system that makes sure that no matter how I enter it, I have a fair shot.
But what you just said, I agree with what you said, but we're assuming now that you already have foreknowledge of what that you're entering into reality. We create laws.
Okay, hang on. This is not something that actually happens, okay? Nobody sat down and said, I'm going to create the justice system in the United States without knowing where I'm in it. It's a thought, sorry. It is a thought problem, an exercise in trying to determine what the most fair thing is going to be. We, who are already in the system, or in the process of creating the system, are looking at this saying, let's do it this way because this is demonstrably the most fair way.
Right. It's an ideal to strive for.
Okay, I was wondering, say you know where you are in the system, and you're so absolutely sure of yourself that you know that there's no way in the world that you can ever go back to being someone who could be taken advantage of in the system.
Okay.
Why should you create laws that should benefit everyone else?
Well, I don't know how you determined that there's no way for you to have any other status.
You're Bill Gates.
What?
If
Bill
Say,
Gates.
for example, you're Bill Gates.
Okay? Bill Gates could be bankrupted tomorrow under the right circumstances.
Yep.
If the financial system collapses, he's just as broke as me.
But I'm not arguing just on his financial status. I'm arguing like based on how much he's done, how many people he's helped. There's at least one person who would take him in. There's at least one person who would help him out.
Maybe, maybe not. But what the hell's that have to do with the system?
But it's based on the people he's helped out. He's acquired enough to at least survive for the rest of his life.
Well, if the financial system collapses, nobody's going to be able to afford to take him in anyway.
So you're saying that the financial system collapses, it collapses for everyone?
Yes, the financial system doesn't just collapse for Bill Gates. Nobody's going to be able to afford to take him in anyway. But the point, if you're asking, here's a better example that you might have wanted to use. I don't see any probability that I'm ever going to be African American, so why would I care about African Americans and making sure that they're treated fairly? That would have been a better example for you to use. However, yeah, the answer is, I don't know that, for example, if I'm just being self-centered and care about me and my offspring, what if I fall in love with somebody who's African American and I have kids that are in a unfair system? The echo is just driving me crazy. It's about recognizing that your situation isn't perfect, that it can change, that you can't predict the future, and about recognizing that fairness is something that benefits us all. Because if you're fair, if you privilege yourself in this one category, there may be other categories that you are not in the privileged class on. And so if instead you continue to push for a society that eliminates privilege uniformly, then you're, instead of being in a world where you're privileged in this arena and extremely underprivileged in this arena, you now have worked towards a society where you have no benefits or drawback of privilege in all arenas. That's the thing. You tend to kind of narrow down. You narrowed down to Bill Gates and financing and what he's done good, and I came up with the analogy, with being African American. The point is, life is a large, complex system, and the fact that you're privileged in one area doesn't mean you're going to be privileged in every area.
Yeah, but the thing is, the thing I was trying to argue was, had it been life had more to it, like after you died, there was something else to it, then I would probably say, okay, it makes sense to make everything better for someone else. But since we already know that once we die, we're dead.
Okay. No.
There's no reason for it.
So are you saying that people have to have some kind of belief in an afterlife or some kind of punishment if they do wrong, or they won't be good in this life?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's no motivation. There should be no motivation to do good if we already know that once we die, well, we're not affected anymore by life.
We're a social species. Of course, we're going to do well. Do as much good as we can for each other.
So here's the thing: what you do, and this is, you're basically getting what's the point behind altruism or doing anything good or anything like that, and that's because you don't know what the future's going to bring. First of all, so if I see somebody on the side of the road with a flat tire, and we are all of this mindset that there's no reason to help anybody else as long as we're the privileged one without the flat tire, then we all just drive by, and we contribute to this idea that nobody in society should bother doing this. However, if we all recognize that, you know what, tomorrow I might be the one with the flat tire, and I'd rather live in a society where people understand that this could be them and exercise a little bit of empathy and compassion, pulling over, stop, help them change the tire, then I now live in a society where I am more likely to get help when I need it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you so very much for your time.
Sure, thanks.
Bye.
That was easy.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have gone there first.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one problem with all of this, which I think I kind of touched on but didn't quite get to, is that we're very myopic. When everything's going our way, we don't tend to waste much time on the thoughts about people who aren't having everything good. But training yourself to see that, to think globally and act locally, to think in a variety of different contexts and act when you have that opportunity is the way to break that myopic vision. It's the way to realize that, oh, what I do has an effect on me, it has effect on others, and what other people do has an effect on me. I don't live in a bubble. I live cooperatively with everybody. And while I may be, king for today, I might be peasant tomorrow. While I might have privilege and everything's going well and I'm healthy and I don't have any need for money, that doesn't mean that that's not going to happen in the future. And even if it doesn't ever happen, if your life just keeps better and better and better and better, contributing to a society that encourages empathy and compassion and charity and good works, still you benefit from. The reason, slavery was supposedly great for the slave owners. And I've said before, if you want to find out what was wrong with it, you talk to the slaves, because it wasn't necessarily great for them. But the truth is, slavery wasn't great for the slave owners either, because it contributed to a society that was in decline. That person that you have as a slave, or that person who you've decided to not care about, could be the one that grows up to cure the disease you're eventually going to get. Could be the one who creates the next technology or improvement to the world that makes your life better that you won't